This segment is brought to you courtesy of Caribbean American Weekly, a newspaper owned and operated by Caribbean Americans. Read the latest edition at www.cawnyc.com. That's www.cawnyc.com. To like us on Facebook, to advertise or to subscribe, visit us at www.cawnyc.com. That's www.cawnyc.com. To advertise with the Caribbean American Weekly publication for freelance assignments to distribute at your business place, visit us at www.cawnyc.com. That's www.cawnyc.com. Or to meet a marketing representative at our office, call 718-771-0988. That's 718-771-0988. In observance of Caribbean Heritage Month, we are highlighting an important and timely conversation about mental health in the Caribbean community. Too often, the stigma around mental illness prevents our families, friends, and neighbors from seeking the help they need. But that's beginning to change thanks to advocates like our next guest. Joining us today is Antoine B. Craigwell, a respected mental health advocate and the forum presenter for the upcoming event, Mental Wellness for My Caribbean Mind, happening Saturday, June the 7th at the Saint Lucia House in Brooklyn. He's here to talk about the urgent need for culturally specific mental health conversations and what attendees can expect from this powerful gathering. Mr. Craigwell, welcome. So good to have you here with us.
Thank you very much for having me, Pearl, and I am so glad to be welcomed back into your radio program. I know that I've been a visitor to your show many years now, so it's good to be back. Thank you.
It's so good to have you. So, what inspired the creation of the Mental Wellness for My Caribbean Mind Forum, and why was it important to center this event around Caribbean heritage?
So that's a kind of multi-layered question. So let me begin by saying that in 2022, I did a series of mental health workshops in Guyana, where I'm from, up and down the country to more than 300 people. This year, I returned to Guyana in February, and I did 13 mental health awareness workshops up and down the country as well. We know that Guyana has the second highest suicide rate in the world per capita. That is per every 100,000 people, an estimated 42 to 44% of the population are suicidal or have taken their lives. Particularly back in February, on February 19th, I did a workshop in the eastern part of the country bordering Suriname, a town called Skeldon. And after the workshop, one of the administrators said to me, as of today, we have had 8 suicides for this month alone. And those were only the reported suicides. So very often people who take their lives, their families don't want anyone to know that the death was a suicide. They would rather, to avoid the shame and the stigma that comes with it, because that's another factor, which we can talk about a little later, shame and stigma. But in July 8, 2023, I did a workshop for the Saint Lucia Association at Saint Lucia Community Foundation House with Neva Jean and her team. And that was extraordinarily well attended on that Saturday. So I've been after the Consul General, Jeremiah Hyacinth, for a while to repeat it, because he and the ambassador were present in July. And after coming back from Guyana and doing these, and I was like, well, let's not just focus on Guyana. Let us expand this to include the Caribbean, because Black and people of color in the Caribbean have intergenerational trauma that we have inherited from our ancestors. that has been the result of colonialism and enslavement. And many of us still carry that trauma. And that trauma, along with contemporaneous trauma, things that we experience in our daily lives, contribute to mental health destabilization. And so this workshop for Caribbean, and it was Jeremiah's idea to say, well, look, June is Caribbean Heritage Month. Let's do this workshop as part of Caribbean, as one aspect of Caribbean Heritage Month. And so we decide now we're going to focus this mental health awareness workshop on the Caribbean. So one of the things I've decided to do with these workshops is to make them expand the interactive nature of the workshop. So it's not you just sitting down there and watching some slides and hearing somebody preach. No, 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 no. This is simply, I am going to give you information. So I would say to anybody listening, if you come in, please walk with a notepad and a pen, because you're going to be getting a lot of information that you are not going to be able to digest in the time. But I will want to introduce music. I will want to introduce breathing techniques. I will want to introduce movement, because all these are aspects of who we are as Caribbean people. We know that when we hear a drum beat, when we hear a soca tune or a calypso tune or a kaiso tune or a reggae tune or not so much a bachata, but an Indian tune, a chutney tune.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all parts of our body start moving, whether we want to or not. And movement and music and sound are important for our mental health. Now, why Caribbean? Because again, for shame and stigma that has been created by colonizers, that we don't want to talk about mental health. So if I say to you, Pearl, how are you doing? I'm fine. I'm doing all right. But I say to you again, Pearl, I've been noticing some things about you. So let me ask you again, how are you doing? Oh, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. I'm good. Now, I know that there's something wrong. Something is not connecting. Okay? And I may leave you alone, but I will observe you. And I'll come back to you again and say, Pearl, I'm concerned about you. What is happening with you today? How are you feeling? What's going on with you? Okay? And to listen to when you speak. To listen without judgment. Because now it's not about me, it's about Pearl. So I will listen to what you have to say. And when we talk to people who are struggling with mental illness, including becoming suicidal, one of the things we often hear them say is, nobody understands. Nobody hears me. Nobody sees me. Nobody listens to me. I can't seem to speak about what's happening, how I'm feeling. Because we live in a community, in a society that is judgmental, that comes to conclusions. And one of the things we're going to talk about at this workshop is self-injury and self-harm, but we're also going to discuss suicide. So the workshop is actually working towards how do we recognize the signs and the symptoms in ourselves and also in others, but also how do we then recognize when somebody is becoming suicidal, and what do we do to step in to help provide them with information and resources and get them the professional help that they need.
So I want to talk to you about stigma, because you mentioned that earlier, and the flyer also spoke about breaking the stigma surrounding mental health. What unique stigmas exist within Caribbean communities, and how does this forum aim to address them?
So first of all, we have to understand what stigma is. Let me put it to you like this. When you don't know, when you don't have the knowledge and the information and the language to discuss a specific issue, you are going to grab anything that comes to you from around your environment, pull them together, and use that to create shame and stigma around the issue, especially if it impacts someone. And so, as humans, we typically do it naturally as a form of selection and also as a form of security, where we separate each other, we compare ourselves with each other. We separate, we look for things that are different but things that are common, and we capitalize on the things that are different between us. Okay? So I look at you, Pearl, and I see, well, okay, you're a Caribbean woman. Okay, we share that in common. But then I start thinking, now, what are the things that are different between you and me? What sets us apart? And can I identify one of those differences and exploit it and use it against you? Because then is where the stigma comes in. I am now going to use that difference to shame you, to stigmatize you. But also, as a Caribbean woman, you know that you need to carry yourself and behave in such a way in the community so that you can move up in life. Therefore, as you move up, you will put down and look down on somebody else who is not in your class, not in your field, whatever. So we start shoving people down because they are not supported, they're not where I want to be, they're not helping me get up. So it's about economic upward mobility, it's social status and social climbing. Okay? These are all things that the colonialists introduced to us. The British had a class system. And the British class system, when they went to India, capitalized on the Indian caste system. So you had class and caste in India. But the British brought all of that to the Caribbean. They separated our communities by class. And so even today, we start looking at each other and saying, well, oh, who's got this job? Who's got that credential? Who's got that qualification? And where do they put them on the social and economic class strata? Okay? Now, if I don't fit into any of those, then I am going to be shamed. If anything that sets me apart, I am going to be shamed. So one of the things that we'll be looking at significantly in this workshop is the role of reconnecting with our ancestral practices. How did our ancestors function in communities? Okay?
So, can you explain the significance of the three topics selected for discussion: stress, anxiety, and depression, self-harm and suicide, and self-care and care for others, and why they were prioritized?
They weren't exactly prioritized.
Okay.
Those were actually three different segments of the workshop, because it begins talking about the role our ancestors have in our lives, that we have become disconnected and separated. Our ancestors' practices are still in our DNA, but it's been beaten, cut out, killed, diluted from us. And so it is part of the entire workshop where we talk about ancestral practices, we talk about the role of our ancestors in our lives, we talk about trauma, and trauma then contributes to how we experience stress, both intergenerational trauma and contemporaneous trauma, which means it's trauma happening today, how that contributes to stress. And unaddressed stress leads to anxiety. What does that look like? And unaddressed anxiety then cascades and leads to depression. What does that look like? And when depression is unaddressed, then it could lead to self-harm. It could lead to self-injury. And then from that, you can move the next step into suicidal ideation, which is having suicide, thinking about suicide and thinking about your death. And then, considering suicide. And so when you've got that entire sequence, that entire train of thought, then we can say, well, how can we take care of ourselves to prevent us from getting to that point where we become suicidal? How do we take care? What do we do? So let's look at the many ways today that we can take care of ourselves. Let's look at the many ways today that we can help take care of someone else. Okay? So, are we getting enough sleep? Are we eating the right foods? Okay? So, when I came into your studio just now, the first thing you did was offered me a slice of cake. Okay? And I turned it down. Why? Because I have cut out sugar from my diet. And here is why I cut out sugar from my diet. As I get older, I'm becoming aware of my rising A1C. And a rising A1C over 7 means that I could become diabetic. If I become diabetic, that begins to affect my cholesterol, my blood pressure. I can have a heart attack. I can have a stroke. I can go blind. Okay? Good. So I cut out sugar. But let us take a historical look at the influence of sugar. Before our ancestors were transshipped across the Atlantic Ocean to the Caribbean and enslaved, they relied on honey and other natural forms of sweeteners. They were brought onto plantations and forced to work to produce something that their plantation owners and the overseers were excited about and used to get all excited and giddy about. And it was expensive because it was now shipped to the courts of Spain and Portugal and England and the Netherlands. Okay? So we started tasting it. What is it that has got these white people getting so crazy and bent out of shape? What is it that they do? What is this thing? So we start tasting it. And if you crush one cane plant, you crush it and drink the juice. That's natural cane sugar. That's natural cane juice. You're not likely to have a blood spike from that. But when you take a teaspoon of sugar, how many cane juices are in that teaspoon? And when you take a teaspoon and you add it to products, then you are now putting into your body concentrated sugar, processed sugar. So our ancestors on the sugar plantation started tasting it and they liked it, and sugar is addictive. Sugar is very addictive because it rushes to the brain and the brain feels good. I got a lot of energy, but then we have a sugar crash and we take some more to come back up. So we keep using it. Okay? So our ancestors now, over the generations, in the 400-500 years, began to develop diabetes, which they didn't recognize. So you might hear some of you old people say, oh, this person got sugar. Or this person, you see that, you see the thing punch your foot there? She got sugar. Because the wound would not heal. And we know that when somebody's got high blood sugar or diabetes, wounds do not heal. Okay? Oh, they're dead from sugar. Because why? They have become diabetic. And there's type 1 and type 2 diabetes. We know that in type 1 is inherited. So it's passed on from generation to generation. Okay? So I'm just giving you an idea of why, when we talk about our mental health, all of what is going on around us is important. Because what Western European and American psychology have told us is that mental health is a simple one diagnosis and address the diagnosis and the diagnosis alone. But the World Health Organization and the European Commission on Health have both agreed that addressing mental health is a whole person type of care. I need to look at all of the factors surrounding you, Pearl. I need to look at everything. Okay? Just a couple of weeks ago, as part of another discussion, we looked at black women's hair and how black women hair, but also some of the chemicals that black women use to treat their hair. How much damage does the chemicals do, not just to their hair, their scalp, but also leach into their bloodstream? Okay? Many of the chemicals contain formaldehyde, which is used in embalming, which is a toxin. Okay? So when we want to talk about mental health again, let's look at all of the factors surrounding an individual. What are the things that are contributing to your mental destabilization? What are the things that you may not be aware of that you are in behaviors you're engaging in that are contributing to your mental destabilization? And how can we pull back from that? How can we begin to undo some of this white, westernized, Americanized construct that we have been fed and we buy into?
So I want to ask you something about the younger generation, because you spoke about, our ancestors, our cultural values and intergenerational beliefs. How do you think that has impacted the younger generation?
Okay. Let's take a step back for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
When a child is born, we look at that child, right? And we sometimes say, oh, that child looked just like your grandfather. And the child may make up an expression on their face. They may laugh. And as the child grows, that child looked just like the grandfather, that child behaving just like the grandmother. Why the child laughing, sir? Like is the grandmother come back? And in truth, it is likely that an ancestor has come back in that child. Because if we were to take a step back to pre-colonialism, pre-enslavement, pre-slave trade, let us look at how our ancestors took care of their children. Do we know that our ancestors beat their children? Or they spoke to them and they valued them, they interacted with them as if they were the ancestor coming back in the form of a child. And so I will treat that child with respect. I will treat that child with kindness. I will be gentle with that child because I want that child to grow up, to take their place in the community, in the family. But enslavement happened. And what we saw was being done to our parents, our elders, we then pass on and we do to our children. So we saw that our parents were being beaten and were being humiliated, and there were arguments and fights in the house. So we think that is normal behavior, so we start to do it. Children today now are the product of generations of trauma, generations of pain, generations of hurt, generations of humiliation, generations of dehumanization. And so the children and the young people today we see are products of generations past. How do we then begin to correct for that? One of the things that we are going to discuss in the workshop is childhood trauma, the way that it shows up in a child, and the way that the child's trauma shows up when they become an adult. So the behaviors of the child the behaviors of an adult can be directly traced back to the traumas that child may have experienced. But on top of that trauma the child may have experienced is the trauma that they may have inherited from their ancestors.
So, Mr. Craigwell, let's turn the spotlight to you a bit. You are the forum presenter. Can you share a bit about your background?
Oh, we should have done that. We don't want to do that.
Yes,
anyway.
A little bit. Just a little bit.
So, when people read my bio, I get kind of like embarrassed because I'm like, are you sure y'all reading about me? Is that me? So I'm Guyanese. I was born and I grew up in Berbice, which is the county in Guyana that had the 1763 rebellion by a slave named Coffee, who historically created the first free African slave called Berbice State in Berbice in 1763 to 1764, until he was betrayed by one of his own generals and, this historian Marjorie Clars wrote a book about the 1763 rebellion called Blood on the River. So I was born and grew up in New Amsterdam, Berbice. And then I moved to Georgetown. I lived in Georgetown for a while, the capital, Guyana, Georgetown, Guyana. Went to high school, went to university. I joined religious life, so I was a Jesuit for a moment. Left there, and I came here to the U.S. And I've been here in the U.S. And I said to some people recently that there is so much shame and stigma surrounding mental health, so much shame and stigma surrounding suicide, that we don't talk about it. We are afraid that we are going to be judged if we talk about it. If we talk about even just a mention that, oh, I considered suicide. Oh, I thought about taking my life. Oh, I attempted suicide. We are afraid of how we are going to be judged, so we keep quiet about it. In 1999, I stood at the edge of the number one platform at 34th Street, and I was going to jump in front of the train. I was at the very back of the platform, so I knew the train would be coming really quickly, very fast, and I would have been hit, not hit to be injured, but hit to be killed. But I stepped back from the platform because we had just buried my sister a few months before. Somebody asked me when I mentioned this story, what made you do it? Or how did you come to that point? And I said, there was a collection of things in my life that happened that all seemed to overwhelm me at that moment. And after taking the step back, I recognized that there was not very many opportunities available to deal with or to address, for me to get help for my mental health. So I decided to do a documentary called You're Not Alone. And out of that documentary, I started an organization called DGBM. And in 2014, I launched a mental health conference that focused on very many different aspects about mental health. And so we celebrated 10 years of the conference last year. And this year, the conference is focusing on veterans' mental health. So we have a call for abstracts to present at the conference, which is going to be on October 10th, which Mayor de Blasio branded as In My Mind Day when he was mayor. And so this year's conference is focused on veterans' mental health. And then I started doing these mental health awareness workshops, as many as wherever I can get to do them. And I started doing the research, putting together the materials, gathering information, and really and truly looking at the connections between things that have been going on in our lives and connecting the dots and seeing patterns as they emerge and saying, hold on a second. We've got all these mental health professionals in our community. How many of them are going back into the communities and providing basic information on awareness? But then let's take another step back. We look at the mental health clinicians in our community who look and sound like us and who have been trained in the Western European and American psychoanalytical construct. Have they embraced and understood their own culture? Have they understood where they come from? Do they know their own story to be able to reach out and influence and impact people who look like them, who sound like them? I remember when I first started doing this work, Pearl, I came across an anecdote of a Jewish woman, a Jewish psychotherapist on Flatbush Avenue in the Haitian area. She was just off of Flatbush in one of those side streets. She put up her shingle announcing that she's a psychotherapist, she's a clinician. She wasn't getting any clients. Fortunately, she may have had the means, but she packed up and she went to live in a Caribbean island for a year. Experienced the food, the music, the culture, the language, the people. She returned to Flatbush Avenue, put back up her shingle, advertised her services, and because she took the time, she's a white Jewish woman, because she took the time, she went there, she learned about the people, she understood them. A year is not much, but it's better than assuming that she knew. She put back out her shingle and she was able to attract a whole lot more clients because now she was able to empathize. She was able to know where they were coming from. She was able to know that when somebody come and talk about, oh, when I made the fufu, my mother didn't like the fufu when I made it and it was too lumpy. She knew what fufu meant. When somebody come and said, oh, the person made some ginger beer and I didn't like the ginger beer because it didn't, she knew what ginger beer was. You understand? So she was able to relate to the people. So she took the time. Now, I am challenging any of your listeners who are clinicians from the Caribbean. Know your story. Go back and learn about your culture, where you come from. Understand how enslavement has impacted you as a person. That now that you are a clinician, you have been trained, and consider that maybe somewhere in your ancestral past is somebody who was a healer. Somebody in your ancestral past may have been somebody who listened to other people and provided counseling, provided care. You are the 21st century version of your ancestor. Does that make sense? You understand what I'm saying?
Perfect, yes. So for those who can't attend in person, is there a plan to expand the reach of this forum through recordings, follow-up events, or community partnerships to ensure broader impact?
No. No. That long question, one simple word, no.
No. Make the time and come.
But here's the thing. I don't do this workshop online because I need to see each person in their face.
Yes.
I need to interact with you one-on-one. But if you can't make it on Saturday coming at Saint Lucia House Foundation on East 49th Street, 438 East 49th Street, just off of Church, between Church and Snyder, just off of Church Avenue. If you can't make it there, then I'm doing another workshop on the 21st of June for the Queens South Queens Women's March Organization at the Yoga Shakti Yoga Center on Lefferts Boulevard. I think it's 11414. It's on Lefferts Boulevard.
So how can somebody contact you if they want you to do a forum or you know?
I'm booked for the rest of my life. No, if somebody wants to contact me, they can send me an email at info@dbgm.org. Again, that is info@dbgm.org. So they can reach me at that email address and I will reach out, send me what it is you want to do, what it is you have in mind. I tell people I am willing to go wherever I can to provide these workshops. I don't charge a fee for them. All I need to know is a place, a date, and a time. And that somebody can provide some snacks for people to eat, because it's important that they have something to eat before we start talking about self-harm and suicide. Then the other thing about this is that none of these workshops, not one of these workshops, is paid. That means that they are free and open to anyone who wants to come. Because a person should not have to pay for information about their mental health.
So thank you. We've been speaking with Antoine B. Craigwell, mental health advocate and the forum presenter for mental wellness for My Caribbean Mind, an important community event aiming to dismantle stigma and build healing within the Caribbean diaspora. The event takes place on Saturday, June the 7th at 10:30 a.m. at the Saint Lucia House, 438 East 49th Street in Brooklyn, and is free and open to the public. And you can register at cawnyc.com. That's cawnyc.com. Mr. Craigwell, thank you for your advocacy, your insights, and for leading such a critical conversation for our community.
Thank you very much again, Pearl, for having me.
You're so very welcome, and I look forward to having you back again. Not in another 50 years.
No, but I hope you can make it and come next Saturday.
I will try.
Good.
All right. Thank you so much. This segment was brought to you courtesy of Caribbean American Weekly, a newspaper owned and operated by Caribbean Americans. Read the latest edition at www.cawnyc.com. That's www.cawnyc.com. To like us on Facebook, to advertise, or to subscribe, visit us at www.cawnyc.com. That's www.cawnyc.com. To advertise with the Caribbean American Weekly publication for freelance assignments to distribute at your business place, visit us at www.cawnyc.com. That's www.cawnyc.com. Or to meet a marketing representative at our office, call 718-771-0988. That's 718-771-0988.